Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am recommending some retellings for you. I love a good retelling, but I am quite picky about what books I like to pick up. I always say when I talk about retellings that say I have hauled that I tend to not enjoy retellings that are super obvious. So like say a Beauty and the Beast retelling that is just straight up Beauty and the Beast, just like a slightly different version. I like retellings that are kind of pulled from different places, like places that you wouldn't necessarily imagine, so not necessarily just fairy tale retellings. And I like stories that really put a new twist on these books and these classic stories that we do know so well if they are fairy tale retellings. So my book recommendation assistant and I are here to recommend 6 books that are all retellings but are maybe a little bit more off the beaten path. So the very first book that I have is an author who is well known for her retellings. This one in particular is one that I really enjoyed though. This is The Mermaid by Christina Henry. So I think she's best known for her Alice in Wonderland retelling, which I think is a series of 3 books maybe, and then there's a book of short stories in that world as well. And I know that it's quite dark, and from the books of hers that I have read that are retellings, her books do tend to lean towards that darker side. So I have read Lost Boy, which is a Peter Pan retelling, and then this, which is not The Little Mermaid. This is actually a retelling of, or a sort of imagining of, the Fiji mermaid, which was a kind of very famous hoax that went around. I'll put a picture, prepare yourselves, of the Fiji mermaid on the screen. It's pretty horrific. I believe it's a monkey's body grafted onto a fish's tail and then mummified. It's pretty horrible looking, and it kind of toured the world as this sort of amazing curiosity. So what she's done is she's taken kind of the idea of an actual mermaid, the Fiji mermaid, and has turned it into this story. So in this book we follow P.T. Barnum, who was a piece of shit in real life. He is not cute like Hugh Jackman is. He's actually a very nasty man, and she really portrays him as a very nasty man, which I really liked because I don't like P.T. Barnum. And he sort of learns about this actual mermaid, and he wants her in his show, and so he goes and he sort of speaks to her and negotiates with her to be part of his circus. However, she is a much more kind of intelligent person than he gives her credit for, and this is all about her kind of butting heads with him and sort of making her way in the human world. It's really good. I thought that this was really fun. I think I rated this 4.5 out of 5 stars when I read it. It's super pacey, it's quite dark, and I really love the exploration of this woman sort of learning to navigate the human world. I thought this was really fun, so if you're looking for something a little bit different from, say, a classic standard retelling, I would pick this up. The next book that I have is another really dark retelling, and it is a fairy tale retelling. It's actually my favorite fairy tale, and I was so excited to learn that there was a retelling of this story because I always loved it so much when I was little, and I was a little bit nervous going into this because it was one of my favorite stories, but I thought this book was really fun. So this is The House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. This is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which is just like so fun. It's basically the story of the 12 princesses who, you know, go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and their shoes have all been worn through. So the king is like, yo, if you can figure out why this is happening, save me some money on shoes, you can marry one of my daughters. And so the hero goes and he follows these girls into this like amazing mystical fae ball where there are trees with gold and silver leaves, and it's fabulous, and they dance the night away, and that's why they're wearing holes through their shoes. Somehow this means that he gets to marry, I think, the youngest daughter, because it's always the youngest daughter. So I was really interested to see how this was going to translate into a YA fantasy book, and I thought that the author did a fabulous job with this. So in this book we follow a girl named Anna Lee, and she is I believe she's the middle daughter in this family. They are the sort of ruling family of this particular little island. So this takes place sort of in a big house by the sea, and there were 12 sisters, and now 4 of them have actually passed away. They're believed to have committed suicide. So she begins having ghostly visions of her sisters, and she also finds out about the sort of mysterious fae ball that her other sisters are attending, and that her sisters may have attended before they passed away. It's a really, really fun book. I really enjoyed this one. There are some content warnings for this one. So for example, for suicide, it's quite dark because she sees these kind of visions of her sisters who have passed away in the manner in which they have passed away. And so if you're maybe kind of like, think you may be sensitive to that, I would recommend checking out some content warnings, but this was a really, really fabulous book. If you know me, you know the fact that I love anything that takes place on, around, in, near the sea, and this was perfect for that. Moving on to a contemporary YA retelling, a book that I will never shut up about, we have Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This is a retelling of Cinderella, as I'm sure you can imagine. I do not like contemporary YA books. I do not find myself relating to the characters at all. It's been a long time since I was a teenager, and usually they just don't do it for me. However, this series of books, because there's 3 so far and they're all fairy tale retellings centering around this particular convention and fandom, and they are such a love letter to geek culture, but they don't shy away from the darker aspects of geek culture. So in this book we follow a girl named Elle, and her father created this amazing convention called Excelsicon, I believe, which is centered around this fandom called Starfield. Starfield was think Star Trek. It was a TV show in like the 60s that became kind of a cult classic, and now it's being rebooted. She learns that this kind of like pretty boy teen dream type actor has been cast in the lead role, her favorite character ever of all time. She writes this blog post about how angry she is about that, and it kind of blows up and goes viral. And then she ends up, I can't remember how, but through mysterious means ends up in this kind of like texting conversation, and she sort of develops this relationship with this person on the other end of the phone, and of course it's the actor, who is also this major Starfield fan, and he's kind of dealing with the expectations of the fandom. I love this so much. As you can probably see from the cover, the pumpkin carriage is a vegan food truck. We have the ball, we have her like, you know, magical Cinderella gown. It's so much fun. We have evil stepsisters, like it's great. I really enjoyed this one. It's something you can totally tear through if you're looking for something that you want to just absolutely devour in a day. Then we have a book that I have a full review for on this channel, so go ahead and link it up above. But this is one by an author who I think is quite divisive. People either really enjoy her books, or they just don't get on with her writing whatsoever. This is the only one of hers that I've ever read, and she is also known for other retellings as well. So this is The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading the sequel, which I'm long overdue to pick up, and also her other retellings. So she wrote a sort of gender-swapped Vlad the Impaler retelling, which I've heard is fabulous, really good. And then she did a kind of reimagining of the Frankenstein story, which sounds really great as well. I have that on my shelf, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. This was just the first one that I happened to have picked up by her, and I thought it was really fun. So this is definitely kind of a new take on the original tale, which is usually, as I said at the beginning, not something that I tend to enjoy as much, but I thought she did a really good job of making it her own in such a way that it didn't just feel like we're just going to retell the story of King Arthur again and again and again. So in this book we follow Guinevere, but she's not really Guinevere. The real Guinevere passed away, and she has been basically put in her place and swapped by Merlin. Now Arthur knows about this, and she knows about this. No one else does, because she has magic power, and magic is very much a no-no in Camelot. So she's basically there to protect Arthur and, you know, make sure that he doesn't die, and she uncovers a plot to kill him. This has a lot of really fun twists on the original story, including, you know, gender swapping, sexuality swapping. It has really fun magic in it, and I thought this is just really great. So I'm very much looking forward forward to reading the second book, and then the third when it comes out. Then I have another book that I don't think I've shouted about for a long time, but it's one of my absolute favorites. I love this author. It's the start of a duology that follows not so much a fairy tale, but a fairy tale trope. So this is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. So this is a really interesting duology. So this first book tackles the kind of evil queen trope, the evil queen that we always see in fairy tales, for example, in Snow White, and it gives her a really solid backstory. So we see her rise from a sort of a beautiful peasant girl who's totally penniless but has this great destiny if she's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve it, and her rise all the way to the very, very top of society as the Empress. And then the second book is more of kind of like what you would imagine the traditional fairy tale to be. We follow the heroine who's taking down the evil queen. And it's so much fun. I love this. If you want like court politics and intrigue and incredible magic and some really, really gruesome stuff, I would highly recommend this. I thought this was absolutely fabulous. I love everything that Julie C. Dow writes. I think she is amazing. So last but not least, we have a retelling of Folklore. This is British folklore kind of reimagined into a series of companion novellas. So I chose the first one. This is Pocketful of Crows by Joanne M. Harris. There are 3 novellas in this series so far, and I would highly recommend all of them. They very much stand alone, but they are all inspired by this thing called the Child Ballads, which is basically British oral tradition folklore that was all gathered together by someone whose last name is Child, which is why we call it the Child Ballads. And these are really, really fun. They're excellent, excellent books. They are really beautifully written. Joanne Harris is an amazing author. If you've not read her before, I would super highly recommend her. And these editions also happen to have really, really lovely illustrations. So in this particular one, we follow a girl. She's kind of a wild girl, sort of think almost kind of like a forest nymph type. And she ends up falling in love with the, son of the incredibly wealthy and powerful family that lives in the castle nearby. He gets her pregnant and then he abandons her and she decides to get her revenge. It is fabulous. It is really, really, really good. I totally fell in love with her writing. I have all of these books and I'm planning to snatch up whatever else she publishes in this series because they are so, 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 so good. So those are my recommendations for some retellings. I have some amazing sounding retellings on my shelves that I have to read, but I haven't quite gotten there yet, so hopefully at some point I will be able to do a part 2 to this video. But in the meantime, I would love to know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, or if you have any recommendations for retellings. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.